The Department of Basic Education has been in the news recently for the good and the bad. This after the Matric class of 2025 achieved remarkable success, while school placements once again rose to the fore. Meanwhile, Minister of Basic Education, Siviwe Gwarube, and Limpopo Education MEC, Mavhungu Lerule, in partnership with the Nali'Bali, led South Africa's national commemoration of World Read Aloud Day in Limpopo. The event forms part of the department's national literacy program and was hosted in partnership with the Limpopo Department of Education. This event further amplifies the importance of reading and language development in early learning. To unpack all of this and more, we're joined by the Minister of Basic Education, Minister Siviwe Gwarube. Minister, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it.
Good evening, Ivan.
We're here to talk about large part the details of the report you gave to the Portfolio Committee yesterday on, of course, going back to school program and all the related problems. But I just want to start with what I ended there on the tail end.
Yeah.
South Africa has a literacy crisis. You were reading to children today.
Yeah.
What will it take to turn that around?
Well, it's going to take the investment that we are doing and the foundations of learning. I think, a number of people probably think that I sound like a broken track record. But at the end of the day, Oliver, you can't, if you don't have the strong foundations of learning right at the beginning, so if you're not having children who are by 5 are able to be cognitively developed, well nutritioned, by 6, when they get to grade R, already able to be ready for school, and if you don't instill those values, and if you don't instill those skills, you're never going to actually achieve the kind of results we want to see, even at a matric level. So when people ask me, how do we fix the matric pass rate, or how do we fix the education system in its entirety, I say we start at 0. So many countries, successful countries around the world, we will see that there's massive investment in early child development. And that's why we've done the strategic reorientation under my leadership to saying we're focusing on the foundations of learning. And that is why today was also quite important, because saying to parents, read to your children, it's important that we take literacy seriously. We can make the shift.
And for that to happen, a number of the issues that you mentioned are important, which is what we're here to speak about. Largely the administration of certain key statutory frameworks and policies, the school nutrition program, the school transport, scholar transport program, school placements, which has become an issue that has plagued South Africa by and large. And given the resource limitation, one can imagine that there would be some problems around it. But what has recently colored the texture of the return to school for many South Africans has been a conversation around foreign nationals taking up seats and tables in classrooms in the country. By and large part, organizations like March and March, Operation Tutula, these are organizations that are claiming that the spaces of South African children are being occupied by foreign national children. What's the department's, your response to that framing?
I think first we have to take a step back and firstly say, how big is the system? You've got 13.7 million learners in our system. You've got almost 500,000 teachers in the system. And what we're talking about is learners or foreign learners who form 1.8% of that figure. So the assertion that somehow learners, South African learners, are being denied spaces by foreign nationals is untrue. And while we understand that this is actually born from a frustration of parents. Parents are mostly frustrated because they are unable to find places at the choices of the schools that they want to for their children. And all of those things are taken into consideration. However, it's important that we don't scapegoat the wrong reasons. We don't scapegoat the wrong people. And we've said, one of the things that really guides us in this conversation, and it's really important in these long-form conversations, Oliver, that we really try to unpack this. The Constitution is quite clear. Section 27 of the Constitution is clear that every child of school-going age must be afforded a space in a school to go to school. Number 2, we are also guided...
Is that inclusive of children who are not South African by citizenship, children who are asylum seekers, children who are, in many instances, refugees, and in many instances undocumented?
It includes all children, and here's the reason why I can confidently say that to you. In 2019, there was a high court case that affirmed this very thing, where the court said you cannot deny children a space in a school or education simply because they are undocumented. And because also, Oliver, the reason why that can't be is that there are South African children who themselves are undocumented. Perhaps middle-class South Africans may not understand why this could be the case, but if you're going into deep rural areas, there are children who don't have parents. There are children who have not had a birth certificate. There are South African children whose homes have burnt down.
Wait, hold on. You mean there are South African children in school today who don't have birth certificates?
Yes, I'm saying to you that the problem here is compounded by the fact that, and the court was quite clear, that you yourselves have a problem where you have South African children who are undocumented in schools. And I'm saying to you, and my argument to you is that perhaps it may not be something that's easily understandable from somebody from a middle class conversation. But if you go into deep rural areas where children are raised by gogos, where children are in shacks that burn down every other day, you would understand why some children in South Africa still remain undocumented today.
Right.
Of course, we must fix that. But the problem that I have is that once you have this blanket approach, then you start scapegoating a number of people. How then do you tell a child who's South African and who's not South African who must leave a classroom and who must not? And so I have to be at all times, while empathizing with the frustration of parents, which is very real, have to be at all times guided by the Constitution and by case law on this matter. And so, in fact, I think largely the issue has been resolved. The Addington issue has not been resolved. Those children.
Can we double click in on that? The Department of Basic Education in the province of KwaZulu-Natal wasn't particularly forthcoming to the media, and we've been struggling to get details out of it. And eventually a statement came out of the MEC's office late last week. What were the facts there, and what was the response both at a provincial and national level?
Look, I mean, the issue around admissions is purely a provincial competency. So while at a national level we support provinces as much as we can, in fact, part of what I've done in the last year is convene the MECs at every given time to say how ready are we for 2026. But of course, Oliver, there will always be these inflection points that happen because of the pressures in the system, particularly in economic hubs in the country, where people are seeking economic opportunities and they're coming to Gauteng, they're going to KwaZulu-Natal, they're going to the Western Cape. Those provinces are always going to feel the pressure. However, it's about how we respond to it. So I think the MEC and the HOD eventually got hold of the situation, and essentially those children who were unplaced were found places they were eventually placed. But I must indicate to you, Oliver, that even if you were to remove the element of 1.8% of children who are of foreign nationals.
What's that as a numerical figure?
I'm not sure how much that is. 1.8
math, yeah.
1.8 out of 13.7 million. And I wouldn't be able to calculate that on the dot. But I'm saying
we're looking less than 1.5 million.
So I'm saying to you, even if you were to remove those learners, we have 120 billion rand backlog in additional classrooms, in additional schools that we need to build. Those have not been allocated to us. That money has not been allocated to us or provinces. The point I'm trying to make is that we are making a system that is large and that is essentially, it's large and it's big, but we're trying to make it work under a fiscal envelope that has completely diminished over the past 10 years. And of course, there are provinces who badly manage their finances. There are provinces
Let's click in on that, because KwaZulu-Natal was a big talking point last year. They mismanaged the funds with Scholar Transport. Scholar Transport operators in the province, till today, Minister, are complaining that they've not been paid. School nutrition program service providers in KwaZulu-Natal, till today, complain that they've not been paid or not paid at all, not in full or at all. And many of them at different times last year protested, withheld their services, and the department responded to this, in the province at least, in a piecemeal kind of way. I put it to the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal that for every R1 they spend in education in that province, only 20 cents goes towards learning and teaching. 80 cents goes towards the administration of education and these sort of things. Is that a ratio that you're happy with? And what powers do you have to intervene if that's not a ratio that you're happy with?
So when we're looking at equitable share and how provinces should healthily divide their finances, 80% should go to the cost of employees and 20% goes to essentially goods and services. So that is the running of schools, particularly no-fee schools, stationery and that kind of thing.
It's the exact opposite in KZN.
So our big problem in KwaZulu-Natal is that they've breached that mark. They are no longer sitting at 80%, they are sitting at over 90%. And then what then that means is that the pot that you have for goods and services is much smaller. But this is a problem that has not just emerged in the last year, Oliver. This is a problem that has been coming over the last 5 years. Bad financial choices have been made, and there have been no consequences for it. And now we sit with a problem where the system is literally holding on tightly. And here's the most interesting thing. KwaZulu-Natal managed to perform the best out of all of our provinces, because they also have the largest number of quintiles 1 to 3 schools, the largest number of learners. It means that the teachers, the district officials, the circuit managers, the people who actually are in the front line of the system, they want to make this work. But we have to be better at managing our finances. And that's why I've taken a much harder line with MECs around expenditure in terms of grants that are given to them through Treasury. So things like the EIG, so the infrastructure grant, conditional grants, I meant to say, conditional grants. We have to be stricter on provinces to say, you're underspending. There's no province in this country that should be underspending on infrastructure. There's no province in this country that should be...
What do you mean provinces are underspending?
So I'm saying I've taken a harder line on provinces during our Council of Education of Ministers, where I look at essentially every single province. Where are we with your conditional grants? Remember, conditional grants are not part of the equitable share. These are grants that come from Treasury to DBE through to the provinces. So we've got a greater monitoring system to say, you've got a problem here. By this time of the financial year, you should be at 70%. Why is this being underspent? Can we get a reason for that? Is it because invoices have not been paid? And this is part of how I'm trying to hold provinces accountable so that actual delivery can start to happen on the ground.
Yeah, let's talk about that. 120 billion rand backlog in infrastructure expenditure just to get schools going. But we also have a situation where many provinces are marred by corruption when it comes to infrastructure spending. And you have a situation where a service provider in one province doesn't complete a school, absconds, goes to the next province, wins a contract there, doesn't complete that as well. What's being done about that?
Yeah. So one of the things I've been quite clear about is that in my view, we should use Treasury regulations to try and blacklist service providers or contractors who abandon work that they have started. So what we have is a situation where you've got implementing agents who then contract the work to contractors who actually do the work. Sometimes, because of trying to be equitable, they allocate the contractors to perhaps somebody who will struggle with cash flow or whatever the case may be, and contractors may walk off the job. My view is that you as an implementing agent should actually be blacklisted from doing work with government again. Because why is it that you haven't done your proper vetting? Why is it that a contractor was able to walk out of sight? And Treasury has those regulations. There are regulations that we can really inflict to say, either it's the implementing agent or the contractor that must be blacklisted. But it can't be that you did shoddy work in Limpopo and then you rock up in the Eastern Cape and do the same thing. And it also can't be that we keep awarding the same kind of bad behavior. So ultimately, people must understand that it's either you work and then you get paid, or that ends.
Just a last question. I want to go back to a previous issue we discussed. We spoke about the learners on that end of the spectrum, but I do want to discuss the teachers on the end of that spectrum. That's around foreign teachers. The argument goes that we have unemployed teaching graduates in South Africa sitting at home. Meanwhile, teachers of foreign national descent are taking up spaces in our schools. And many are arguing, let go of those teachers and employ South African who are qualified teachers in those roles. What's your response to that?
Firstly, you have to understand that there can be nobody who's employed in South Africa if there are an undocumented foreigner, because you can't actually have a job in the state unless you have your documents in order. So we are talking about people who are legally in the country. And sometimes I think that we conflate the two. We conflate the issue around illegal foreigners and people who are here illegally and people who are here absolutely legally. And we must be very careful about that, because what is it that we are asking South Africa to be? Do we want to see the same kind of scenes that we're seeing in the US with ICE and the like? No. So I'm saying to you, out of 500,000 teachers, there's 3,000 teachers who are foreigners. And those people are documented. They are here in South Africa legally. And ultimately, they were recruited and they were hired. I don't do any hiring as the Minister of Basic Education, and therefore I can't do any firing as the Minister of Basic Education. And also, additionally, our labor laws don't allow us to simply walk in and say, you're a foreigner, you are now fired. It just simply doesn't work that way. And so we must also understand, Oliver, that there was a time in South Africa where there was an active recruitment of teachers from other countries who were going to help us with math and science.
Right.
And so those are some of the things that we are dealing with now. But I think, again, the conversation around illegal immigration should continue to happen, but it should not be happening in playgrounds, in front of the gates of schools, where it involves snatching children out of the waiting line out of a school, traumatizing children. That, for me, is where we must draw the line. We have to be better people, and we have to be better South Africans. And I don't think that's a country that we want to see, where children are literally being chucked out of school.
Absolutely. Minister, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. It's the Minister of Basic Education, Siviwe Gwarube.